Have you ever really thought about it? The names we use for countries, the people who live there, the languages they speak? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on these labels. You'll see they're not just simple words. They're packed with history and some pretty surprising truths about who we are and how we're all connected. I mean, it seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? You've got a country, the people from that country, and the language they speak. You'd think there'd be this nice, clean one-to-one match. But is it really that simple? Okay, so let's dive in and really take a closer look. We're going to sift through the data and hunt for the patterns. But more importantly, we're looking for where those patterns totally fall apart. That's where we find the really unexpected stories these labels are telling us. All right, first up, let's start with the most common thread we found in our list, the English language. A bunch of major countries share it, which makes sense. But the real question is, does that mean they share everything else? And wow, the contrast here is pretty stark, isn't it? You've got America, Australia, Britain, Canada, New Zealand. Yep, all English-speaking. But then you look over at the people and currency columns, and it's a whole different story. You've got Americans with the US dollar, Australians with their own dollar, the British with the pound. So yeah, the language is a link, but their national and economic identities, totally distinct. Let's just zero in on this comparison. On one side, Britain, the British, the pound. On the other, America, the American, the US dollar. It really shows you how a shared linguistic root, something planted centuries ago, can grow into two completely different trees, Two totally independent national identities. So that brings up a really interesting question. If sharing a language doesn't create this perfect unified identity, what does? What does a more tightly knit connection actually look like when we look at the data? Well, that brings us to our next pattern, what I like to call the perfect match. These are the countries where everything just clicks. The name of the place, the name for the people, and the name of the language, they all line up almost perfectly. I mean, just look at how clean this is. It's so satisfying. Japan, Japanese, Japanese. Italy, Italian, Italian. Germany, German, German. Even Brazil, Portuguese language, Brazilian people, it's still a super close fit. There's this really powerful, simple clarity to it, right? It just screams a strong, cohesive identity. Yeah, this one-to-one-to-one relationship, it's like a simple but really powerful recipe for a national identity. When the country, the people, and the language all march in lockstep, it sends a super clear message to the world about who they are. But, the world is rarely that simple. So what happens when a different kind of label gets shared across borders? Something that completely shatters that perfect match idea in a totally new way. This is where we start talking about a connection that has nothing to do with language. We're talking about money, a shared currency that creates a completely different kind of bond, a really modern kind of union. So get this. In our list, there's a group of 5 countries that are linked together, not by what they say, but by what's in their wallets. They all use the same exact currency. Any guesses what it is? Yup, they're all part of the Eurozone. And here they are: Austria, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. Now, just stop and think about that for a second. You've got people speaking German, French, Italian, Spanish, totally different languages, really distinct national cultures, and yet they are all bound together by one single shared economic identity. That's pretty wild. This is a perfect example of how identity isn't just one thing. It's layered, like an onion. You can be proudly French in your national identity, you can be a French speaker in your linguistic identity, and you can be part of the Eurozone in your economic identity. It's not one or the other. All those layers exist at the same time. Okay, now we get to my favorite part, the exceptions. Seriously, because it's always the outliers, the ones that don't quite fit the neat little patterns, that have the most fascinating stories hiding just beneath the surface. Let's start with Canada. The data points to not one, but 2 official languages, English and French. And that's not just some random piece of trivia. That bilingualism is right at the very core of Canada's national identity. It tells a story about its unique history with both French and British settlement. And then there's India. Our list points out both English and Hindi, but honestly, that's just scratching the very, very tip of the iceberg. It hints at this incredibly diverse nation with a complex colonial history and a massive, vibrant tapestry of languages spoken all over the country today. And check this one out, Vietnam. The languages listed are Vietnamese and French. Wait, what? Now that's a pairing that makes you stop and go, Doesn't it? Just seeing those two together without knowing anything else, it's a massive clue. It hints at a deep and really complex colonial history right there in the data. So what's the takeaway here? It's that these labels we started with, country, language, people, they're anything but simple. Each one is like a little time capsule, a shorthand for centuries of history, culture, politics, and connections that span the entire globe. And that leaves us with one final thought. From those perfect matches to all the fascinating exceptions, every single label tells a story that was forged by history. So the next time you just casually hear a country's name, maybe pause for a second and ask yourself, what's the real story? What intricate tale of identity is hiding inside that single word?